This is Simplified Success, the podcast, hosted by myself, Krystal Blackard.
And me, Lindsay Reynolds.
Between the two of us, we have cultivated over $60 million in sales online. We have led big teams and operated in very high pressure environments where leadership either frankly stabilizes or everything completely falls apart, right, Linz?
Yeah. And everything else in between, from being each other's weddings to making sourdough, helping each other be good moms and raise kids. Man, we have a blast on here, and we feel just so excited to have you guys be hearing the podcast and be on here, because we feel like this is just a place for us to be able to pour back into you and serve well, from all the cool places that we've had the opportunity to. Our fun pastimes are whiteboarding out our next business opportunity. So welcome to
Absolutely.
our fun conversations.
Absolutely. We move fast and we build smart, and we have a lot of fun here. So welcome to Simplified Success, the podcast.
No. Hello, hello. Welcome back to the podcast.
Yay!
Today's a fun special episode because our favorite thing to do is celebrate and reflect. I think, honestly, if we think about it, like half the time we're talking about celebrating the cool things, and then like looking at, hey, what did we learn? What worked? What didn't? Like that's just like basically, if you want to be on the fly on the wall of most of Krystal and I's conversations, it's pretty much that, like all the time. But today's special because we're getting to, and actually we decided we wanted to kind of do this like live with you guys. So we do this all the time. Krystal and I have these conversations, but we have a really big milestone. I say we, but like jointly, we'll call it we, that we're celebrating right now. Because Krystal spent a good portion of her first part of her career, and she'll talk more about this because I want to giving a little like starter of this conversation, and then Krystal can jump in. Building a social selling organization, and she's since retired from that at least a couple of years ago, and she'll give full details on that. But because of what she built and how well she built it, is still continuing to receive income. But that's which is cool. We aren't celebrating that because that gets to be like the normal, which you should celebrate the normal. We'll talk about that later. But she hit a really incredible milestone, even though she's retired, and at this point has surpassed she was already in the $1 million club, but now from that social selling organization, crossed over $6 million of commissions from that organization. It was a much larger organization to create that kind of commissions, but it's insane. So now she gets to go on a fun shopping spree and do all the things. But so like I'm gonna dive right in because like this is what we would normally do if we weren't on a podcast. So like what do you think's like the biggest like what do you think is the biggest lesson you learned? What do you think is the biggest thing about people don't believe is possible about making money like this and then retiring and still making money like this? Like, it's not from a 401k, it's not from a pension. Like, you built this business, you don't work in it every day. Like, what do you think is the biggest lie people believe about that being possible?
Well, first of all, this industry, the social selling, so just to be super transparent, it wasn't an MLM. And
Yeah.
I'm very specific to call that out because there are some very specific a very specific skill set that I learned over there that very much translates into what Lindsay and I do today. And we'll go more into that. But it was an MLM company. And I think one of the biggest things that is misunderstood in this industry, it's sold, but it's not really accepted. And so I'm kind of breaking this glass ceiling here, and it's been a little bit hard because I've had a lot of pushback about it, is that you can build this business and then you can step away from it, completely retire, have the residual payment, and have the time freedom. And that's what I chose to do. And it does work. Absolutely does work. I'm living proof of that. Living proof. But that is something that is sold to you, but not necessarily accepted if you choose to take that path. And so I did want to call that out because I think that,
It's interesting.
and I
Yeah, we're going to go right into some real talk.
well, and it's nothing against the industry, but I think there's got to be an acceptance for people understanding that if they sell that dream and then people choose to do that, then there ought to be more. And I will give a lot of credit to the company that I'm still like a retired distributor with. I don't distribute at all anymore. I simply just place my order, did my time, loved it. Just place my order. That's all I do. I don't touch it. But I do think that as a whole, the industry should celebrate that more. And I do want to give props to my company for acknowledging and celebrating that, even though I've been retired for 2 years. So that was cool.
Yeah.
You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because I think,
No, for
like,
sure.
I think distributors use that as a selling point to get people into the business, like, across it's a very recognized, um, thing that they sell you on, right? This lifestyle, this dream, but then when people actually go in to put it into practice and they step away and they retire, it's like, "I can't believe they stopped working. I can't believe they don't spend their whole entire lives." And I think people transition, they go into different seasons, and I think that's an important call out.
For sure, and I think that's part of what happens when and that's why we do what we do, right? Like, we're so focused on teaching you how to be an unshakable leader, teaching you how to sell appropriately, and then teaching you how to scale in a way where you have the choice. And I think that's the real piece is, like, I feel like what I hear you saying is, like, the industry as a whole should applaud the choice that they helped you
Mhm,
create, right? But I
mhm,
think in
mhm.
any business, it's super important that you're thinking about building it in such a way that you have the choice, right?
Right,
Whether you
right.
take it or not, having the choice feels better, right?
Well, and to be super transparent, if I were to go back, there would be 100 things I would do differently.
Yeah,
100 things. Like, this isn't me saying that I did it all perfectly and you should model the exact steps that I did, and we talk a lot about that in our coaching. Like, the reason
yeah.
that I'm so successful is because I basically made every mistake possible. And even looking back, I'm like, "Oh, I should have done this. I should like could have done it better.
Mhm.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda," right? But still did it well, and it's
Oh,
still
yeah.
producing results. And things for me have to mathematically make sense, because if it maths and money maths, like, when money comes into my account, that maths. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, for sure.
Mhm.
So, what do you think was, like, the biggest shift in your first major income jump? Because, like, when you started your first social selling business, it wasn't your first business you'd ever done, but it was probably the social selling business was the first one that was exponentially successful. Is
Oh,
that
yeah.
accurate?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, because
So,
before that,
you
I was
went from,
cleaning
like
houses and doing spray tans. Yeah.
yeah, so you went from, like, not sh like, mathing wasn't mathing because there probably wasn't enough money
Right,
because you had small children and
right.
all the things.
Mhm.
So what do you feel like was the biggest shift in that first income jump where you were like, "Oh my gosh, I might actually be able to do this?" Because I think there's, like when
Well,
you jump into these things, like, you think like, "Oh, maybe I can be like her," but there's always this part of you that's like, "I don't know, can I?" So, like, when did that shift for you?
yeah, absolutely. So I remember when I started making consistently 2 to 3,000 a month, that was a game changer. And then all I could see was getting to 10,000 a month because that was 5 figures. And I thought 10,000 a month will change my life. And that really was a very life changing milestone. And I remember going from like 2 to 3,000 to 10,000 a month consistently. I had this fear in the back of my mind that I would lose it all and it would slip away and that I wasn't qualified and I wasn't good enough, right? And then when I had hit that $10,000 mark a month, which was equated to a six-figure annual, like, income, right? As long as you maintain it, because this is sales-based, remember, this is not salary, this is commissions-based, right? So, big
Right.
difference. So, when I hit that, that was a really big game changer, and then from there, then I just started focusing on increasing it by 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, and those are the jumps. But I do remember when I went from the jump from making 50 a month, and we're talking super candid about salary. Also, I just want to preface this in the social MLM selling space, direct sales and MLM, they very much talk about how much money the distributors are making. You can pull up reports and see like rank monthly income. So it does sometimes, like, I'll call this out. I don't talk about this in any other industry. Like, we don't go around talking about our construction businesses and our pressure washer. But in this industry, it's kind of the exception. So I just want to call that out because sometimes it does feel a
Yeah.
little cringy, and I get that too. But just so you guys understand, like, if you guys aren't familiar with this, that's how that works. So
Well, and
then
you
I
have to
went
think
from
like, one note on that, right? So that was the
yeah,
commission you were making, but you still had like the way that that business is structured, you make a commission,
uh-huh,
and then within your
correct.
own entity, you had your own expenses, you had your own team, you had your own stuff. So it's not like
Mhm,
I feel like all too often in this industry, we don't
mhm,
talk about how numbers really work in a business, right? And
mhm,
so top
mhm,
line for you to earn commissions of that kind of level, it was a $60
mhm.
million business, right? Yes, the
Right.
MLM organization was taking care of logistics and execution and those pieces, which is why you made your commission. But then your commission number, so if you're making 10, 20, 30, whatever it was thousand a month, you still have an entire team that you need to drive their influence. You still have,
Mhm,
challenges you're running and expenses you have and your own team to help support your teams. I think that's also a really important piece that I think people forget about when you think about hearing these things, especially in the MLM space. It's like, oh, I'm making 50,000 a month. Okay, that's fantastic. That's your top line of your portion of your business. But
Mhm.
then you had expenses and you had other stuff. When
Mhm.
you start running an organization of that size, like there is other stuff, right? And I think it's something that people
Oh,
need to
for
think
sure.
about as you're doing it. But yeah, sorry, you were saying. So when you're making those jumps, like when did you feel like you could hold it? Like when did it not
Well,
feel wobbly?
y well, it always felt wobbly, just to be super
Yeah.
transparent. It always did. It always
Yeah.
did because it was sales and then there was so much out of my control, right? I didn't have complete autonomy over that business because it was within an organization. But I do wanna say something based on what you just said.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my take home might have been 50,000 a month, but that was 10% of the complete sales volume ran through an organization in 30 days.
Right.
So now that wasn't all of my sales volume, but that was sales volume that I was leading the charge on. And we're going to get into the lead gens and how we facilitated that shortly.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, Lizzie was a big part of that lead gen sister, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, what is 10%? What is 50,000 10% of, Lindsay? I mean, you can do the math quickly on that.
I'd have to
That's,
do like 500 it would be more than 500,000.
yeah, it'd be more
5,000,000,
than
right?
500.
Be 5,000,000, right?
Yeah,
10% of
something like
5,000,000. You can tell we have an
so
accountant, and I do math with calculators, but that's good. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So whatever that number is, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
sit here and, like, reverse engineer math in my
Yeah.
head. But to just to be super transparent, that's what it was on that month. So that's where that 60,000 number comes
No,
from,
it'd be
right?
more than
And
that.
act
It would be more than 5,000,000. It'd be 50,000,000, I think, times by
well, no, it
10.
wouldn't be 50. Yeah.
Um,
But just to kinda be super, like,
yeah,
to really, really, really break that down and synthesize that down, that's where that number comes from. Now, it's not always exactly 10%, like, it jumps to 14, 15%, it would sink down, like, it would ebb and flow depending on the level the volume came from and all that, and those are all just really, just minute idiosyncrasies in that industry that, understanding how that works, but the bottom line is that was my take home was a very just a portion of what actual sales ran through that organization is the point I'm trying to pull out of there.
yeah,
So actually 60 million in total sales cultivated was actually hit 2 years ago. And then this milestone came because of the way that it actually fluctuated and it was actually a little bit higher than normal. The
yeah,
efficiency rate was actually closer to 15. So just to math.
yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
I actually mathed
So
that out with somebody at the corporate office too. We, like, confirmed that, so that's
yeah.
not Crystal, just
Maybe
Crystal trying to
well,
do
maybe we'll throw
that.
some stuff in the show notes of the exact numbers because you can tell, like, but we
Right.
do numbers to a point, then
Right,
we're good.
yeah. I'm great with numbers, don't put me on the spot to do it in my head.
Yeah. So, um, walk me through the process of turning your content into, like, an actual paying customer, because a lot of what you did was in that space.
Absolutely. Okay, so mind you, starting back in 2014 was when I started this, when I, like, initiated this, it was June 2014, and so it'll be 12 years this June, correct, that I've had that, that spot and had that business, and I will tell you, like, it's been an interesting shift in social media and content creation, and there's a term that we used in the industry, people still use it, and I have actually seen a lot of conflict on whether this is still relevant or not. It was a it was a specific way to market called attraction marketing, and I've actually seen a lot of content here lately from people that say attraction marketing is dead, and I laugh about that, and I wanna say, maybe if you're selling something that people don't really wanna buy, it could be completely dead. However, there is never gonna be a place in this world where you put a really powerful before and becoming, before and after picture side by side. I don't care if it's of your waist, of your hair, of your skin, of your metrics in a back office because you're selling SaaS. I don't care what it is. When you learn to do comparisons well, people want what you got. And it's probably one of the most effective ways to attract in an audience is for them to just see results. They don't want to hear about it. They don't necessarily want to listen. And so I will push back. I will stand on that hill. I will die on that hill. I mean, I see people still doing it today. I see people
Yeah.
throwing up pictures of really incredible results, and it goes crazy because people want what you have. Like, you're never like, I don't
Yeah.
care who you are, I don't care what social space you're in, I don't care how gangsta you are at content, right? The bottom line is one of the foundational pieces of being able to sell well in the online space, especially in MLM and direct sales, is being able to show a before and a becoming, because people want that. They want to alleviate a pain point. They don't care about all your pleasure. They just see, and in my case, it was weight loss. I didn't lose a lot of weight, but what I did do is I got from my baggy postpartum jeans into really skinny jeans, and I did it fast, and that sold, right? And I knew how to
Yeah.
market it. Now, you can go into all the nuances of all that, right? Just being super transparent. So then what we did, Lindsay, and you know the answer to this, we
Yeah.
took that concept and we made it highly duplicable. We created an online community. It was in its day, I don't know now because I haven't kept up with it. In its day, it was one of the top 5 biggest social selling spaces in Facebook. And it still keeps about 365,000 members. And so what we did was we trained a bunch of distributors to come in and leverage that page as a lead gen. And it was amazing. And we had a really cool strategy. Now, that strategy, except for the attraction marketing piece, necessarily wouldn't be duplicable in today's day and age. And I do see a lot of
Yeah.
distributors in the industry still trying to do that exact same strategy where they post a before and after picture, then they go talk about the product in their story, and that's all they do. And it's stagnating their growth because they do not understand the value of nurturing and building relationships. And that was something that came very authentically for me and easy. Relationship building is my favorite thing in the world. So that came
Yeah.
out of my soul. Does that make sense? Did that kinda answer
For
your
sure,
question?
and I think that's where it's like, we talk a lot about, especially if you are in the social selling space, building a duplication model that works, but I think
Mhm.
it's really important to recognize how you do that well, how you do that well. I think it's super
Mhm.
important because if you try to, like you said, you just do before and afters and you do that and you're emulating what someone else is doing, but it doesn't have the
Mhm.
same energy behind it, it doesn't resonate the same. And I think that's
Right.
part of what, and you've talked about this so much in the Unshakable Leader, but like to do this
Uh-huh.
well and you think about like how you held the influence, because that's the one thing I think people forget about in social selling is like they think you can just follow the bouncing ball and it will just work for
Mm.
you, and then they do the steps that they were told to do by their upline and it doesn't work the same way it's working for them. They immediately think they're doing something wrong or not right, and then because they don't have all the skills from an Unshakable Leader perspective, which is part of the reason why
Mm.
it's not working, then it feels like
Mhm.
the whole thing's crumbling. And so I think it's really
Correct.
interesting that you're pointing that out because it's not just about what you do, it's about who you are when you do it. A coach said it to me 4 years ago, and I've
Right.
always taken that because it so matters. The energy has to be squeaky clean. You have to know how you're going about doing it strategy-wise. Like you said, they're trying to copy the same strategy, but without the right energy behind it, without the right servant heart, without the right give, without it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Correct. Well, and that's a really great thing to pull out of it because I've had one of the biggest questions I've gotten asked over the course of my career is how did you come in? Because I was 29 when I started. I hit my first million in 3 years. I had 0 experience. I had 0 training, right? And this is not a flex, but I did realize something, and I was very candid about this when I grew this business. I had spent the first decade of my life I got married and had my first kid at 19. So from 19 to 29, I had spent that decade. We had moved several times. Then my current, spouse, his career was changing and it was upgrading, and we moved to accommodate that. But because of that, I lived in 3 different states. I lived in like 6 different towns. I had built really solid relationships and credibility in a lot of really key places. And I had a very specific setup to come in and be very successful in that business because I had done that. I didn't know that I was doing that.
For
I
sure.
didn't realize I was building that huge circle of credibility. I didn't realize that I had that huge circle of influence. And then so what happened was I also understood the leverage of my hot market, right? Because here's what people do not understand. So I had a couple things going. I had a huge circle of influence from just how I had lived my life the first decade of it. Plus, I understood that I needed to get my hot market converted into business partners because that's the deepest place where I had the circle of influence. And so what I did was as I was recruiting And those people, those my core group, my small circle, right? I then taught them how to be my business partners. And that and to this day, even though I'm retired, even though some of them don't even do the business anymore, we still all communicate in a group chat and we're all friends. And I think that speaks very, very, very largely to the fact that we attract who we are, right? And it was a really solid, good group of really good humans who
Yeah.
truly cared, had a lot of integrity, and really loved each other despite business. But really, really important nuance to call out. So if you don't come to the table with a big circle of influence and you don't quickly convert your business partners that you sign up and or your the signups that you have in the first 6 months to a year, your hot market into business partners, you will struggle. And people forego that. They're just working on making a sale and not duplicating. I focused on duplication right off the bat instead
Yeah.
of just sell, 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 sell.
Well, and it's so funny too, because if you look at the frameworks we've created to help
Mhm,
people, that's where
mhm.
cafe came from.
Right.
You know, it's like if you don't know how to do, and it's not because, and I want to be clear, because when you look at cafe, and we have a free version of cafe, right? There's a free version. I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
is
yeah, there's a
you
free
can go
version.
check it
Yeah.
out what we're talking about. But the whole concept of
We'll
cafe,
drop it in the show notes.
yeah, it walks you through the concept of how, honestly, how you build really incredible relationships. It's a
Uh-huh.
relationship tool. Is that like the earn can be money, or the earn can just be that you have really incredible friends and really incredible relationships. And so I think
Yeah,
part of where it's interesting, because you had spent your life from a growth perspective, from a faith perspective, emulating something that you had read in the Bible, that you had seen in some places, and in some places not, right? Like, it's not like you grew
right.
up in this, no, I'm not going to your childhood, but like it's not like you grew up in this example where you had like every person around you is perfect, because nobody has that, right?
Right,
Or like
right,
every person you knew was just incredible at building these incredible relationships and had a multi-million dollar organization that was also not
right.
necessarily your realm. You had people in your world that had that kind of influence, but it wasn't like you grew up in that by any means, right?
Correct, correct.
And
Mhm.
so I think it's really cool that you took something that was genuine. Like, and I think that's where people miss it. They think that building a business means you have to learn this new skill. I'm using air quotes if you're listening to this new
Right,
skill, when really it's about genuinely caring about people, genuinely building relationships. And when you did that and you had something that could be valuable to them, it was very easy for people to trust you to move forward. And it's part of why you're so choosy about what you put your stamp on.
correct.
Because
That's exactly it. That's
yeah.
exactly and now I do also wanna call out one thing. I just wanna be
Yes.
'cause I just
Go.
so much value transparency.
Yeah, go.
So the first decade of my life from 19 to 29, I will be super transparent here. I was lonely. I was really lonely in a really lonely marriage. I between that time period, I had 2 little girls that were my life, right? My marriage was really, really rough, and I'm not blaming that other person. I take responsibility for that too. But the only way I knew how to counter that loneliness was to have good girlfriends. And so I felt at a very much at a brick wall in my marriage relationship, and it did not now, I've learned a lot of things I could have done different. This is not me saying that I anyways, but to fulfill a lonely like, to fill a hole, a lonely gap in my soul, I made friends,
Yeah.
and I built relationships because Crystal needed that to survive. So, wanna be totally transparent. There was a lot of brokenness in me that actually set me up for rigorous success
Yeah.
in that business, and to call that out's really, really important because sometimes I think women who have a really great marriage don't necessarily have super close girlfriends because they're so focused on their marriage, and that's a beautiful thing, and I don't wanna
Awesome.
take that I don't
No.
wanna, like, put any pressure on somebody who's like, "Well, my husband's my best friend," because 'cause I'm in that situation now, and my time with my girlfriends has completely gone like this because I'm so focused there, so I do wanna call that out.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important call out. Okay, what do you think? So a lot of times we're going to talk about social selling pretty much this entire conversation, because it's about contemplating and celebrating what you created with your team and all the people. So
Yeah.
what do you think? A lot of social selling is told to do stuff in DMs. You know, DM
Yep.
somebody,
Yep.
reach out to your warm market, and in
Yep.
some cases they're told go bug your friends. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
how because I don't know that you, I mean, everybody balances on that line, but you never did that in a way that was really weird or off, right? So what do you think is the biggest mistake people make in their DMs when they're trying to sell?
Well, I wouldn't say I never did that. I'm sure there are people who could say, "Oh, no,
Well,
she
she
did this
did that.
in December 20" 2nd of 2019. I mean, whatever. I'm sure I did. Like, I don't wanna put, like, this complete blanket statement over it and say that I never did anything to that nature, because I'm sure I did. But I quickly realized that, like, people operate in a what's in it for them. They also really value transparency.
Yeah.
And so, like, understanding those 2 nuances, like, they don't care about you. They care about them.
Yep.
And when you can, like, genuinely be a human, and then when you want to approach them about something, just be like, "Look, here's the bottom line, and you can tell me no, and
Mhm.
we will still be," like, just being super authentic and transparent about it. And now I will tell you, I did learn a lot of that from my direct upline, because she was really good at that. That's actually how she recruited me. Um, and she actually came and told me, she said, "Krystal," because I was really hesitant to do it, I really pushed back on it really, really hard. Kinda got to be the joke. But she said, "Krystal, you have such a circle of influence. If you put a brown paper bag over your head, everybody else would too." And now she knew how to fluff my ego a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, and I was like, "Oh gosh," you know? But she also didn't pay me an ungenuine compliment. She was correct in that, and the
Yeah.
proof is, again, in the math. And so she was like, "Take it or leave it." And she almost took it away from me, but she had confidence and posture, and because of that, and so I learned to emulate that really, really fast. That was something that she was a genius at. And
Yeah.
so I learned to emulate that really, really quickly. And because that's something I'm really good at, is learning how to emulate what's really successful. And so I did that, and I learned that, like, if you just are up front, you're just really transparent. But also if you pay people genuine compliments too, like, I'm not gonna go to you, Lindsay, and be like, "Oh my goodness, your long, beautiful blonde hair and your 6-foot stature is amazing." You'd be like, "Are you on something? Because you obviously are blind." You know what I mean? Like, don't be
Yeah.
cringy about it, but
Yeah.
authentically, it's amazing. And if you're not trying to recruit every Tom, Dick, and Harry, and you're super intentional about who you wanna work with, because that matters. People are like, "Oh,
Really
sign up
matters.
everybody, your dog's dog." And I'm like, "No, because then you have," anyways, that's a whole different
Yeah.
problem,
Different question, different problem. Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's the key to it. And being a human if they turn you down, like, being like,
Yeah,
"Cool."
that's what I was gonna ask next. I think, like, when you and I'd be curious, I've never actually asked you this, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you in contemplating your I know you spent a lot of time contemplating that season of your life
Uh-huh.
and the way you grew that business. Are there any times where you where in hindsight you were like, "Man, that was cringy. I shouldn't have done it that way." Did you repair that? How did you handle that when you noticed
Oh,
that?
yeah. Oh, yeah, a lot. I can tell
Yeah.
you of one specific situation with a distributor, and if she listens to this and hears the story, she'll know who it is. But she was on, I mean, oh, yeah, lots of cringe. Lots of
Yeah.
cringe. Like, I
'Cause
cannot sit
you get into
here.
the cycle, right? And everyone's like,
You
"This is the cool
do.
thing," and and then you need it, and you're the when you're not unshakable, you're nervous, and so then you just comes out
Yeah.
sideways. Yeah.
Well, and just the little things that too, because you're working so hard and you're moving so fast, that you think don't matter, and it comes down to who you are when nobody's watching.
Yeah.
And so I remember doing a lot of things early on. I made a lot of mistakes, and I didn't operate in full transparency. Like, I can look at times and I was like, "Oh, that was dishonest, Crystal." And every time I had one of those thoughts, like, I came through a season, and I was running, like, they call it ignorance on fire, for sure. And like, pretty much would do anything to make a sale. Not, like, no, I'm not talking, like, OnlyFans anything, but, like, I mean, I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, what," and I essentially would, like,
Mhm.
step up and serve, and I would, like, I would kinda sell my soul to that situation and make sure, because I did put some merit on that, but I did do some unsqueaky clean things, like, some dishonest things, kinda like they happened in the mix, and I looked back
Yeah.
on those, and every time I had a reflection point and I saw that, I then started to go back and make an amendment for that behavior. And, and
That fun?
that. Huh?
Was that fun?
You know what? It was freeing. It
Yeah,
was
I
really
bet.
freeing, and
Yeah.
I even went back, like, there were some things, and I'm sure after we have this conversation, I'm probably there's gonna be a list
Think
of
of
more
3
things, and I'm
more.
like,
Yeah.
"I need to go make an amends for that now," and I will, because I'm not carrying that around. I'm not carrying that brick in my backpack.
Mhm.
If I mess that up and I'm being called to that obedience, then I'm gonna go fix it. They may not receive it, but I'm gonna go fix it. But
Totally.
there was some
At least
cross
make the
lines.
attempt to make.
Yeah, but there were some
Yeah.
cross lines and some sister lines that I worked indirectly with that I didn't particularly care for in the time,
Yeah.
and they were building in similar areas as I was, and it got to be real competitive, and it's interesting now because we're all good friends and we really like each other. Well, at
Yeah.
the time, we didn't. We were jealous and we had a scarcity mindset,
Everybody was
and
afraid, yeah,
there was
yeah.
a lot of backstabbing, but I look at that time and I'm like, "Man, that we were" but we've really fixed it, genuinely fixed it, and it's amazing how powerful that amendment and that willingness to go eat crow. Uh, I have also made amendments with people that still to this day will not return a call, will not return you know what I mean? So, like, it doesn't always work out that way, but you can see the ones who are growing and you can see the ones who are staying stuck in that kinda cycle, you know?
No, for sure, and I think that's, like and we talk about that a lot on the unshakable leader, but I think
Yeah.
it's important for your own, like you said, about removing the brick to
Mhm.
go have the hard conversation regardless of the outcome.
Right.
Like you said, and so I think it's so we all strive, and I think as we're getting older, we're all striving to continue to I shouldn't say even older, wiser is probably more what it is. We all
Yeah.
strive to be squeaky clean as humanly possible. Like, that's, like, a huge thing for our team and our brand, like, everything
Mhm.
we do is 100% integrity first, and if we miss the
Yeah.
mark, and we go own it. But I
Yeah.
think it can be scary to do that, but what like you said, it's really freeing. It's not necessarily always fun, but it's really freeing.
It's not fun,
No.
but it's the I committed there was a really cool speaker that the company that I was in brought in, when I was in the heights of my success in my career, and she talked about facing fear, and every day for a year or every week for a year, she faced a fear, and so I realized one of my biggest fears was eating crow and owning my mistakes, like, I had this perpetual need to be right, and a lot of that came out sideways because I was in a really negative relationship, and I saw that, like, it was, like, some of my protective mechanisms, and I've done a lot of work on that too, but I started learning that eating crow was the best way for me to, like, change a behavior, like,
Yeah.
if I didn't wanna be, like, two-faced or I didn't wanna be then I needed to go own it, accept it, make an amendment to that person directly, look them in the eyes and apologize for my junk, not say why I did it, not try to justify it with their behavior, just own my side of the street, keep my side of the street clean. Then
Yeah.
what happened is I started fixing that behavior, and I really wanna pull this out of like, I wanna really, like, state this because I think you see people like, you definitely see the tip of the iceberg experience, right? Like, you see the success, but I wanna be really transparent. I know Lindsay and I very much value this about, like, the reason that we're qualified to teach and train and mentor on so much of this stuff is because we did it so wrong and
Yeah.
fixed it. It's not because we just had this grandiose idea, had a little tiny metrics of success. It's because we've lived in the trenches of the suck and came out of it. And that's where I really want to push on this conversation and say, despite all the failures, despite all the dishonest moments, despite all the like backstabbing girly blah blah blah, like, and yet still, that's kinda what I wanna extract here.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Well, in all that time, do you have an and then I'm kinda put you on the spot. Do you have any idea how many people were in the organization? Like, how many human beings? Any clue?
Let me math this for a second, I could probably tell you just quickly. I mean, I could give you a rough estimate.
Yeah, just roughly.
I would have probably known that. I do know at one point there was close to 10,000. Let's see here. Yeah, there was, and this was just my level 1 through 8. This was just my pay commission.
Yeah.
But in my level 1 through 8 paid commission, there were over 10,000 at one point. Now there's not it's gotten smaller, I don't wanna sit here and tell you like it's
Yeah, no,
still
but I mean, at
operating
some point, that was what you had a level of influence on. So,
Mhm.
in what you saw, what do you think separated people who were able to scale teams and those who would stall out?
Man, I know this is, like, such a thing, but the people that would scale teams were not afraid. They had a lot of grit, and they would just stick with it and be consistent, and I that's not a formula for fast, that's just a formula for success. It didn't always happen fast. In fact, sometimes it was painfully long, and it didn't mean they always got to where they wanted to go,
Yeah,
right? And a lot of times and honestly, like, the people that were willing to go back and kinda own their mistakes, I saw a lot of people get stuck and stay very, very, very stagnant and never go to another level because they would not go and fix and amend their behavior. And I feel like joy always follows obedience. If you
yeah,
want the success and you want the accolades,
I
you'll get
agree.
it to a point, but you'll never find true joy unless you walk in that obedience. And we are called to make amendments and seek forgiveness and forgive.
I
And
agree.
you will not get anywhere in life unless you practice that.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what's so important is, like, It would it's interesting because that ceiling you run into we talked about this on another podcast. I feel like it
Uh,
was with Jennifer, maybe, is
yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
thinking. When we talked about the concept around you will rise to the level of your leadership. And so when you stall out, when you notice in your life or in your business or in your relationships that you're hitting a stall, that's
Uh-huh.
actually a gift because
Yeah.
it's literally protecting you from getting way in over your head.
Mhm.
And it's giving you a view of, like, this is a thing you need to pause, reflect on,
Uh-huh.
contemplate, build a skill, get a tool. Like, there's something that's keeping you at this ceiling, and if you want the
Yeah.
ceiling to move, you
Yeah.
have to be obedient, and obedience looks like asking for wisdom. It looks like digging deep into what's causing the problem. It looks like going to people who have done what you're trying to do and surpassed it and getting help and getting resources and getting tools and looking at
Mhm.
systems. Like, it comes but I think people look at that as, like, I'm not good enough, and it's like, yeah, you're right, you're not at this point to go where you wanna go, but this is a pause. It's not that you're not good enough from an identity perspective, it means you genuinely just don't there's something you need to modify, there's a skill, there's a learning, there's something, whether it's a tool, a relationship, there's something that you have not grown to allow for that
Mhm.
you're going to look different, but that doesn't have to
Mhm.
mean that's who you are, and I
Right.
think so, I mean, is that something that you thought maybe you noticed in people that that grit piece is not necessarily that you didn't run into problems or that it didn't not work out. It was that that didn't become their identity. Because I think about
Right.
people who are just gritty and
Yeah.
like actually my husband and I had this conversation about A players versus B and C players. And I'm like, an A player is just somebody who believes that they're gonna figure it out. It's not actually that you get better results. I mean, you do by default because you don't give up and you figure it out. But like an
Mhm.
A player is not an A player because they always win. And so I think that's like an just that's came out of my mouth. Interesting call out. So
Yeah. Yeah, so let me talk to that just a
yeah,
second.
yeah.
So, something that differentiates A players from B players, and I call it, like, level 4 to level 5 leaders, like, we kinda have that
Mhm,
same
mhm.
nuance.
Yep,
So, grit is important, but grit paired with pride will crash and burn,
yep,
and you see it, and it's ugly. And
yep,
I did it. I did it,
right,
I can tell you.
yeah.
Grit paired with humility will rise to the top, and let me explain this, and let me kinda break
I
this down.
remember watching you shift in this. Like, I
Yeah,
can remember the point at which you shifted from into this very deep humility. Like, I
correct.
remember that. Yeah.
And so humility here are the characteristics of humility, and this is really, really important. And interestingly enough, if you keep like it's actually coming in another podcast. My mentor actually, I get to interview my mentor, and he talks about this. He's actually taught me this. Steve, the characteristics of a level 5 leader that walks in humility understands that he must have a virtuous heart. He understands that he must have zero pride and zero ego. He understands that he must be charitable. He must be generous. He must be quickly willing to forgive. He must like basically it's the fruits of the spirit.
Yeah.
Gentleness, peace, kindness, love, self-control, patience, like all those things practiced and implemented. And when you see yourself deficient in one area, right? And for humans, it's usually pride
Yeah.
and ego.
And ego. I was
Um,
gonna say ego was the other one.
yeah, and they really they're like best friends.
Yep.
Then what happens is grit gets paired with ego and grit gets unpaired with humility, and that's where the problems hit. And understanding that is so important. And that's where leadership of self and leadership of team come in and are so relevant. And oftentimes you see people who have grit paired with pride go really far. And it's disheartening. But what
Yeah.
happens is you don't see the backside where they're crashing and burning, but I promise you, if you'll walk in those fruits and you walk in those character traits, you'll get further in life and relationships and everything. And that's the switch that I had to make because I was very much walking with grit, with pride. And it was pride to hide a personal situation that was catastrophically unhealthy.
Yep.
And that's what the pride was. I was trying to cover that up. I was trying to make it look really pretty because I had become a public facing person. I had had success. I didn't want everybody to know my home life was falling apart. And then when I finally started owning it and started walking it out, being like the chains broke off.
Well, I think the one thing that's interesting about that is you don't always know what's going on with people. But I think when you see grit and pride together, you can almost always, and I'm not going to say always, I don't like putting people in boxes, but you can almost always guarantee if you see pride that heavily, their other stuff is going on for that person.
Oh,
They're
yeah,
they
they're
they are carrying
deflecting.
other their backpack is so full of bricks. I almost feel like it's interesting 'cause we've had these conversations in our other businesses and
Mhm.
frustrations with people and things like that, and I'm like, "Man, for them to behave that way, I feel for them." Because
Mhm.
when somebody walks with like you said, like, your need to walk with grit and pride came from carrying some really heavy bricks,
Well,
and
having
other
to
people
prove
in their
something to
life.
somebody that doesn't even matter, and that's what it becomes, and it's
It's
like
a heavy brick to carry.
yeah, and you can see it play out, like, you can sit back and watch it, and I'm not saying
Yeah.
I've mastered it, this is not me saying that I'm
Oh,
perfect at this,
no.
but I do check myself a lot in this,
Yeah. But
you
I
know?
think the first step in anything is being able to put words to it and call it out so that you can start noticing it, and I think
Yeah.
this is an like, you're never going to be to the destination. You
Mm-mm.
being the best version of yourself is a continued evolution. You
Mhm.
never get there, right?
Right,
That's not the point, and
right.
so I think it's having self-awareness, it's noticing how things are perceived or noticing and not from a weird place of, like, trying to ego make yourself liked by everybody, I don't mean like that. But,
Yeah.
like, when what you're doing isn't landing the way you intended, all of those things come over time, but
Mhm.
it's super important that you recognize as you're walking through it that this is that it's real, you're gonna have this stuff happen, and it's part of an
Yep.
evolution, and the way you fix it is through repair, not through
Right,
avoidance.
right, right, exactly.
Okay, so, one big question, um, you gave up a lot.
Mhm.
This might actually be kinda hard to talk about, but we're gonna do it anyways. There
Okay.
was a real cost to your success, right?
Mhm.
There was a cost with your children, there was a cost with your family, there was a cost financially. What do you feel like you would actually cost you to make that money?
Mm. Hmm.
Because I mean, it's great. Let's go back to what we're talking about. You got to make $6 million in less than 10 years in your commissions. What does that actually look like? What did you give up to make $6 million?
Yeah, that's a great call out. So, I did give up a lot. I gave up a lot of well, like, just talking about it, personally, I gave up a lot of, there were times when I gave up a lot of, like, uh, how do I say this? In the beginning, I did, uh, jeopardize my integrity, to some degree. Because to me, like, I started, to me, be integral is keeping everything super balanced, God, marriage, family, then work, and I very much would place work above everything, and in some points, it was even above God, and I saw that, and that was a huge mistake for Krystal, and so, first of all, like, things can't cost you your soul, and I started to see that, and I was like, "Man, I'm not putting my money where my mouth is if I am putting my work above my soul." So first of all, I had to learn that lesson, and that's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow, right? But there's a reason that God calls us to do things. There's a reason we're supposed to keep the Sabbath. There's a reason that work comes after him, after spouse, after family. I now this is something that it did balance out pretty quickly, but in the beginning I did really sacrifice a lot of time with my children, and I do look back on that, and I have some regrets, but I did very quickly fix that because I was not willing to risk that, and because I did fix that really, really quickly, I made some pretty big pivots, and I started taking my kids with me, then
Mhm.
became a non-negotiable. So I drug my kids all over the free world and, my kids had passports when they were little bitty,
Yeah.
and my kids have sat in meetings and seen and experienced things. My youngest daughter has sat in some really important leadership meetings where really important decisions were made where only a handful of people were even invited into that room, and because it was like, "She's a non-negotiable, she goes where I go." A lot of it was because of the home life. I didn't have places for her to stay, and I had to bring them. Because of that, it also now and I did have some good friends that would help me out, I'm not
Oh,
saying that I
for
didn't, because
sure.
I did have some
Yeah.
amazing humans who but I just couldn't always leave them with somebody, like, I had to just take them sometimes.
Yeah.
And because of that, she got to sit and grow, she learned how to behave, she learned how to act in situations, and my kids actually have a lot of really fond memories of me during that career. They also remember getting, bonked upside the head if they talked while I was on a phone call, like, "Be quiet," and they quickly learned, and we laugh about that. I mean, not maybe not bonked on the head, I'm probably being a little cartoonish there, just, like, with the
I know what you're
but you know
saying.
what I mean, like, I'd give them the look and, like, point the finger. And, just clarifying that, like, don't take that to heart. That's I
By
know.
all means, if you know her kids, call them. They're not gonna say you can ask
Yeah,
them directly.
they yeah. Anyways, but, I might have, anyways, we'll keep going from that. But those are some of the things that I definitely very much look at. My health, I did sacrifice my health and my, not on intentionally, but I didn't understand sometimes the stress level that I was putting on myself, and
You
it did come out
sacrificed your hair, so there's
my
that.
hair did fall out. It grew back. I'm so proud of my hair now because this
Yeah.
is all my real hair and it's not extensions. It did grow back, but I did have to fix that. My immune system and I was in a supplement company, so thank God I did have, products that would help kinda counterbalance that, and I did eat
Sure.
healthily, but I had a lot of stress in my home life and my job was so my health did take a toll on that, and I did have to do some course correcting there. But yeah, so there were big sacrifices, and those things like hair loss in your 30s is not fun, you know?
Yeah, can't relate. Ha 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 ha.
Right, right.
Don't run yourself into the ground, don't get salmonella. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, we'll leave that one right there, right?
Yeah, don't get that sick.
Ooh,
Okay, so when we talk about retired, because I think this is like an interesting conversation, because even
yeah,
like I think there's so many conversations in this space about. I don't think I'm just gonna call it out. I don't think people believe half what people say about any of this space because they tell you things like go ahead and retire and then and throw rocks at you when you retire, right? Or yeah, you
yeah,
can grow it, but then you can't. Then grow it our way. Like there's a lot of like, I'm not trying to get into the whole dark side of this industry, but if you've
yeah,
been in it any period of time or you've seen it
yeah,
from the outside, like, surely you've been somewhat exposed to that. So, being completely transparent, because that's what we are, like, this is beyond vulnerability. We're just telling you exactly what it is. Sometimes
yeah,
transparency isn't that great, so we're not gonna get gross about it, but
yeah.
what does retired actually mean to you? Like, genuinely, like, how many hours are you actually spending? Like, what is retired? Because I think it's really important for people to actually understand what that means when we say that, because it's like, "Oh, yeah, I retired and I still get this big check," and then it's like kinda like how you were only working 5 hours a week making $50,000 a month, kinda like that. So, like, let's just, like, kibosh that real quick. So what's the real truth around how many hours did you actually work to make 50K a month? And then what does retirement look like?
So to make 50,000 a month, I was probably working 12-hour days, 6
Yeah,
days a week. I mean,
yeah,
just to be super honest, and I think that's an
yeah.
important call out. Like, it
But
didn't
you
just
wouldn't do it
happen.
that way again, but that's what happened.
I wouldn't do it that way again,
Yeah.
and I am very, very, very thankful for the things I did right that allowed me to retire. I spent a lot of time really, 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 really driving home the principles of duplication, and because of that and
Definitely.
because when I was doing it, I very, very, very much spent a lot of time growing humans. That's why I was able to retire, and I see that. That is my identity. I am called here on this earth to be a person who is relentless in helping others find their way to God-given greatness, and because of that skill set that that's my gift, and I very much accept that and own that. That is my gift, and because of that, that's why I was able to grow the organization that I did. I very much was very, 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 very much committed to helping others grow, and because of that, then that skill set turned around and duplicated and duplicated and duplicated and duplicated. That is why that is right there. Now, there were some really great sales and marketing strategies that put into place too, but that
Yeah.
right there is my biggest call out to why I was able to retire. Um, I retired 2 years ago, so I was 39, and when I say I retire, I don't touch it. It's not in like a I don't want it's just it was a season. I realized it was a season, and when I stepped into my 2.0 era, which is where I'm at now, I talk about that a lot in my content,
Mhm.
it was very much I very much felt called to walk out of that and to just enjoy the fruits of what I had built. So I place my monthly order, takes me to about 10 minutes each month, and that's literally all I do in this and I did completely retire, like completely retire. I don't attend events, I don't attend calls, I don't attend leadership sessions. I still get invited, like not to the big stuff anymore. They know that I've retired. I still get invited to like all the things that I qualify like at events and stuff, which is great. It's a kindness that I appreciate. For this particular milestone, they are gonna celebrate it on stage at the next conference and do a big call out. They sent me a Macy's& and Co. gift card to go on a shopping spree, which is cool. This is actually the second time I've got to go on a shopping spree at Tiffany's through this company, which is fantastic. It's so cool. Like, so up my love language alley. But, like, when I say I retired, I've completely stepped away and still make a five-figure a month check over there. So it's very much retirement. It very much went from one extreme to, like, crazy work effort to very much the other extreme to like, okay, I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is. I told people that this was time freedom. I'm gonna prove it to myself and have been able to.
Yeah, which is so cool. Okay,
Yeah.
so if someone was stuck at the $2,000 mark
Okay.
and they can't get out of it,
Yep.
what are they doing wrong? What's the next step? What should they do?
Man, they need to do some deep self-reflection. They need to figure out what bricks they're carrying. They need to go back and look because probably the biggest problem is like how they're showing up. If they're not leading themselves, nobody else is going to want to be led by them. And the people that are going to want to be led by them are below and have more bricks than they do. So you very much want to eliminate what's keeping your leadership stuck because that's what you're going to attract, right? You can do all the sales and all the marketing and have all that in place and be doing a good job at it, but if you're not, there's something internally that comes out of you, right? That is a very real thing. And when you can correct that and you can free yourself from what's keeping you like bogged down, what's keeping you oppressed, what's keeping you depressed. Are you drinking every single night? Are you struggling? I'm not saying that you can't have a drink, but if you're drinking every single night, you're probably like it's probably like deflecting something else internally inside you that you need to deal with, right? Are you like overly doing something in other ways? Are you like angry quick? That's deflection. Address that. If you address that and you start walking that out, you're gonna start leveling up. You'll start going up. Interestingly enough, that's what we teach in the Chaos to Control
Mhm.
toolkit. We'll link it below. It's pretty
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Shameless plug. Shameless
Yeah.
plug.
But I think it's like I think that's the thing though, if you're stuck, you need the tool. But what's interesting
Yeah.
is, like, you still use the tool at like, whatever was the brick, you remove it to an extent, but when it shows back up, please don't think that that means that you are terrible at
Yeah.
removing bricks. Like, new
Yeah.
levels create new visibility to new things, and
Mhm.
sometimes visibility deeper to the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I think it's something you have to really recognize, that's why it's important to have a good group around you. That's why it's important to have other people who are going through a thing. That's why we
Uh-huh.
have the communities that we do, is because part of
Yeah.
it is the tools, part of it's the resources, and part of it's having somebody else say, "Yeah, I feel that too sometimes, and you're not crazy."
Right.
Or, "I walked through that. Have you tried this?" You know?
Right.
Sometimes
Yeah.
it's just maybe you are crazy and we still love you. Sometimes it's all of those things. I had one of those phone calls with Krystal earlier this week. She's like, you're being a little ridiculous." I went on this whole little vent and I felt very justified and it was very logically accurate. And then she was like, so I'm gonna push on you for a second. Uh love you, but you're being a little bit ridiculous. So maybe you should do this, this, and this, which I did, and it was better. But I did feel better because I was allowed to vent and then also was told, "Hear you, crazy person. Come back to reality." So I think that's what's so valuable is, like, you have to have people in your corner that'll call you out. And I imagine in the seasons where you didn't have your squeaky clean integrity pieces, you didn't have that either. You didn't have a
Mm-mm.
coach in your corner saying, "Hey, that was a little off." You didn't have somebody in your corner from that kind of relationship. I mean, today you
Yeah.
do. Like, if you were doing
Yeah.
something, I'd be like, "Crystal, off," right? Or vice
Yeah.
versa. Like, I think it's so important that you have that, and that's where a coach comes in, that's where communities come in, that's where masterminds come in. Some of that stuff is so valuable because it'll help you redirect faster, and it can keep
Mhm.
you from going farther and having more amends to make. Uh,
Well, and I quickly got a mentor, so
yeah,
I have never in business not had a mentor that I work with on a very regular basis, and in fact,
yeah,
right now I have 2 that I work with very consistently. At one point in my life, I had 4 that I was working with very consistently, and they all had
yep,
different sections of life that they were helping me navigate, right? Like, so some
yep,
of it was business relationships, some of it was personal, some of it was my faith, some of it was my relationship and dealing with like just the byproducts of the addiction cycle and some of the things that I was going through in that relationship with that spouse. But mentorship was pivotal because if I hadn't had that, I wouldn't have had the accountability. And if I hadn't had the accountability, who knows where I would have ended up? Who knows like what kind of I'm a workaholic. Like I don't
yeah,
and you can justify success easy,
you
but it
can.
would have had its toll on my children. And now my children are adults and I would have been seeing some really negative impact on them had I not fixed that and had that mentorship, you
And
know?
had somebody outside of you be able to help you. I think
Yes,
that's important
absolutely.
too. It's not
Oh
because of your
man.
own lack of wisdom, but it's hard for you to see yourself sometimes. And I think, and I mean,
Yeah.
we have mentors that we work with together.
Uh-huh.
in the business, on things that we're trying to learn and grow in the business, and then we have
Yep.
separate mentors. Actually, ironically, I think some are actually overlapped because, well, they are,
Well, we have
but,
we
like,
we have the
for
same
different
mentor, but
things.
we work in different contain like,
Yeah.
we're not doing it together, we're doing it separately with the same person, which is kinda
Yeah,
cool.
it is cool.
Yeah.
So, well, congratulations on this huge
Yep.
milestone. I know
Thank
we'll be
you.
celebrating a lot more, but now you guys can kinda see a little bit of these are the kind of conversations we have. And it's like, okay, so what would you do different? How would you make it better? Which I guess we didn't really dive as much into that. Unless you want to throw out a couple of things. If you were to go back and do it again to make 50K a
Mhm.
month and not work 12-hour
Mhm.
days with what you've learned, and quite frankly, what we teach people in our stuff,
Right.
but how would you do different if you were going to start back over?
Well, okay, so this is I'm glad you asked this question. This is
Yeah.
actually really a really important call out. So
Yeah.
the biggest regret that I have with this business is that I did not systematize it better. I felt like where I shined was leadership and human development. That was my shining point. I feel like for the times there was some amazing systemization that happened for lead gen, but it wasn't something that if I could so just to be super transparent, Lindsay and I started building a system over there back in 2016, I think. It was way before its time and it got very much rebuked. I wish that I would have pushed harder on that to implement that because there is some of that over there still, but had I been more emphatic and had I been more like just insistent on it, it would have made such a difference for that whole entire organization. So I very deeply regret not systematizing it in my own ecosystem
Yeah.
because I leveraged and I relied on the company's platform and they cannot provide you what you need as a business owner. They do a good job.
Yeah.
They do the best they can, but they are working with hundreds of thousands of people. You need your own ecosystem, your own CRM, your own database, your own systemization, your own lead gen, your own sales engine. Like you need all that. And had I done a more proficient job of that, that's my biggest regret. And so again, in the 2.0 era that Lindsay and I are in, we will not let that lay. It's interesting too, because that's where Lindsay and I first started working together over a decade ago. And that was something that she was very much emphatic about. She was ahead of her time. You were ahead of your time in that skill set. And so it
Thanks.
was very much not
I'm
accepted.
just glad that now you can help explain it in a way that this is why we're yin and yang, right? Like like you can explain in a way that I never could. Yeah.
Well, and building that out, like you had that vision and we started to implement it and it very much it was just before its time. It wasn't ready to be received. I
Yeah.
wish that I would have done it differently. That's one of my biggest regrets. I am thankful though that my skill set in human development stayed and that has replicated on, and that is also, like, systems and leadership. Man, if you can marry the 2, you can become unstoppable. You can install one or the other, and it's great, but
Yeah.
you wanna
Do
have,
both.
like, unstoppability, install both. It
I
it will
agree.
change your life,
Yeah.
and that's where and that's what we get to walk in now, and then we have complete autonomy of this business, which is really, really cool, but that would be my very biggest regret.
Well, it'd be crazy to know what your retirement income would look like now had that system
Ah,
been fully implemented.
I know.
What would you say? What we put in the what it would actually look like?
Yeah, what it would actually look like today, it would be mind-blowing. It's good, it could be
Oh, yeah.
insane. Yeah,
Well, and I also
yeah,
would say too, in fairness to us and the reality of the fact that what's available today and what you can build today is
right,
like we built some really cool stuff based on what was available at the time.
right,
And what's available today and what we build for clients today and what we have for our own team today is like
right, yeah,
so much better. It's so
it's
great.
amazing. I love the ecosystem that I get to function in every single day, and I love the fastness of how it does it, and I love the freedom that my list is this big, I knock it down, and then everything else moves without me. It's amazing, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Systems give you that actual freedom that is sold to you.
Yeah,
I think
and
that
actually, we're gonna
leadership
pull that
gets you to the right level, but scale systems properly is what actually allows you the freedom. Yeah.
exactly. So if you're catching this podcast, not there coming soon, I am actually going to turn the tables and I'm going to interview Lindsay and I'm going to pull some of this greatness out of her brain because we have a lot to celebrate on her end for success too. So
We've got some cool stuff that we've done over the last little bit that we can share.
yeah,
So, yeah,
we're
it's been
gonna
great
really bring
meeting
it to life here.
you. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, well, everybody have an amazing day. Hope you enjoyed our little coffee conversation.
Yeah.
All right.
See you again.
Well, thank you so much for listening today. We are so glad that we got the opportunity to spend this time with you. If, as you were listening and things felt like wow, or you had one of those moments, it's our favorite. If it's like, oh, that's a nugget, man, we hope that you stick around. We want you to subscribe, and that way you can hear all of the amazing things that we're going to be riffing about and give us some feedback on all the things.
Absolutely. Everything we teach comes from real live experiences. We don't build any tools that we ourselves have not had to use and have been absolutely desperate for ourselves. And so, building crazy revenue streams, building under pressure, turning chaos into structure is actually what we do best. And we have learned from some of the lowest of lows and gotten to come back on top of the mountain. So, thank you for taking that time to listen with us.
Yeah. So make sure you tune in, continue to steal from our 10,000 hours and the amazing guests that we get to bring on the podcast so that you can continue to grow, learn, and be the best version of yourself. So tune in for the next one. We'll see you guys soon.
Bye.